The anime starts in a classroom where students are about to begin their literature class, but a flash of light suddenly appears, causing an After this event, one of the students wakes up and feels that something strange is happening as everything around her is dark. After managing to escape, she realizes she is surrounded by spiders, and she soon notices that she has also become one, having reincarnated as a spider. She begins to throw a tantrum over what happened, but realizes it won't help. Later, the spider starts feeling hungry, so she decides to follow her sisters. However, upon seeing them eat another spider, she is astonished, thinking they are cannibals, and prefers to leave. But as she tries to escape, she sees a huge spider, apparently her mother, trying to eat her. After fleeing from that place, she starts to ponder how all of this happened, as the last thing she remembers is being in the classroom. She thinks it might have been an attack or a natural disaster, but considers that maybe she isn't and her body is in the hospital, or the other option is that the spider took her memories. However, she simply decides to forget about the matter. Later, she hears a voice telling her she has 100 points and can gain the level 1 analysis ability. Despite not knowing what's happening, she accepts and thus gains her ability. However, she loses patience as her analyses are common, but she tries to concentrate to use it properly and level up. Using it on herself doesn't work either, as she reads that she is just a simple unnamed spider. She then starts to think that talking about abilities, levels, and points sounds very much like a video game. So she must now think like a gamer since she was one in her past life. But she can't think on an empty stomach, so she goes out to search for food, noticing that she is in another world as there are many monstrous animals around. On her way, she encounters another lifeless spider, so she fears that humans might end her life. But out of fear, she starts spinning webs, deciding to make a shelter, which exhausts her due to her empty stomach, so she has no choice but to eat from that. All these initial moments of her new life cause some of her abilities to increase and others to appear. After she finishes eating, that voice tells her she receives the title of and gains the taboo and magic abilities, something that confuses her as she doesn't know how to use them. But then she realizes that titles grant her abilities, so she starts dancing to achieve that title but trips over a web. Seeing it still moving, she starts following the trail and eventually finds a frog trapped in the web. The first thing that comes to her mind is that frogs taste like chicken, so it will be easier to eat it. But she didn't expect the animal to spit venom, which lands in her eye, causing her to lose vision on that side. So she has no choice but to escape, thus gaining the acid resistance ability. But upon realizing that she also gains abilities that way, she decides to go after the frog. The protagonist starts dodging its venomous attacks, and through a counterattack from behind, she manages to defeat it thanks to her poisonous fangs, which makes her happy to have defeated her first prey. In another scene in a small celebration in the kingdom of Analite, some students who were in the classroom are reincarnated as part of the kingdom. This is the case of Shunsu Kamada, who is reincarnated as the fourth son of the king of the kingdom of Analite, named Schlain Zagan Analite, and his friend Kaneda Oshima, who is reborn as a beautiful princess and daughter of a duke named Carnacius Siri Anibald, who they call Keisha. Lastly, there's a small dragon named Fei, who is actually Mirai Shinohara. As they converse, an elf named Philomos Heritnes approaches, who is actually the teacher of the class, Kanami Okazaki. But Shun's sister Su becomes jealous as Oka is very close to her brother. Later, the teacher takes her 3 students along with 2 other young royals who are also in the classroom, Natsun Kengo, now called Hugo Rengzan, and Heisbi Yuka, now called Yuri, to talk about what happened in the classroom in private. The next day, the protagonist remembers when one of her classmates named Mirai used to bother her while she was reading her book. In the world of the kingdoms, the boys are about to have classes, but Natsume approaches Shun just to tell him that for him, God is on his side because they reincarnated as princes. They also talk about the kingdom's hero, Julius, the prince's brother, so the young man gets excited when talking about him and even expresses a desire to be like him. After Natsu leaves, Fei mentions overhearing their conversation while perched on Shun's shoulder and thinks that if this is a blessing for them, then what happened to her is a punishment because she is not human, possibly due to her past life of bothering Hiro Wakaba. At that moment, Oka arrives since she is now the same age as them and their classmate. She tells them that she still needs to locate some of her students, including Wakaba. While the protagonist is facing another frog of the same species, fortunately, her abilities have advanced and she easily defeats it. At that moment, her skin starts to break and shine, indicating that she is shedding her skin. The voice tells her that this is because her abilities have improved and several of them have leveled up. Thanks to this, her body has changed and she even regained vision in the eye affected by the venom. All this makes her discover something new, and she says she now feels excited about this new video game-like life. After this, her webs start moving, indicating that she has caught a new prey. On the way, she hopes it's not another frog, and to her surprise, it's a man trapped while holding an egg. But to escape, he breathes fire, burning the web. The spider doesn't understand what's happening, but realizes her home wasn't as safe as she thought. So now she needs to make repairs since it was destroyed. She does so with much style, even building a room with a bed, and she has threads that will alert her when prey falls into her trap. Later, the spider starts feeling hungry again, so she decides to eat the egg the human left behind. But no matter how hard she tries, she can't break it. Luckily, her analysis ability has leveled up, and now she can learn more. By analyzing the egg, she discovers it belongs to an earth dragon, making her realize it will be difficult to break and she's not yet prepared to fight it. Then, while the spider plays with a web-made ball, she sees her threads moving, and upon looking, she sees humans advancing towards her, setting her home on fire. So she runs to escape. As she runs, she feels a bit frustrated as she can do nothing but flee. She remembers not fitting in anywhere at school, and even her family fell apart, so now the only place she belonged to was being destroyed. Thus, she decides she can't escape anymore and needs combat experience to live without fearing anyone. So she goes out to fight different monsters, getting injured in many battles. The voice tells her she's a weak spider, but she insists that despite appearances, she won all the battles. However, thanks to this, she discovers that some battles grant her powers. Later, to level up, the protagonist decides to explore and search for more enemies as she realizes she's only using her webs and fangs for fights. Along the way, she encounters a large number of insects following her, so she has no choice but to escape and run for her life, which she luckily manages to do, but ends up exhausted. So she decides to rest for a while, but a noise wakes her up, and using an ability, she discovers a huge snake about to attack her. So she immediately runs for her life, trying to use whatever she can to defeat her opponent. And after a difficult fight, she manages to win thanks to her fangs, although she gets hurt. However, thanks to all this, she sheds her skin again, her abilities level up, and she even gains expanded vision. Now that she's about to level up several times, she can choose what to evolve into, either a lesser Pterodactyl or a small Pterodactyl. She chooses the latter option and instantly. After what happened, the spider wakes up and realizes she's not so different from how she used to be, although upon analyzing her information, she notices that her species name has changed. However, her energy bar has dropped to level 1, so upon evolving, she starts from scratch again, which annoys her. But she decides to eat the snake to calm her hunger and fill her bar, although she fails to do so. Thus, she goes in search of the next victim. Later, she has the possibility to choose between two abilities, so she uses both of her points since they are important. One of them is detection, but when she activates it, she starts getting a headache from the noise it produces in her mind, so she simply deactivates and cancels it. The other one is thread manipulation, which is very useful as she is faster and more agile than before. Later, she goes out in search of food but encounters humans who try to confront her. Upon analyzing them, she realizes they have an advanced level, so she runs away. But they follow her and she can do nothing but run. When she manages to escape, she encounters monsters, which she evades, but unable to climb, she falls down a cliff. In the kingdom's world, the boys are in class, realizing that Natsume hasn't changed from who he used to be in the other life. But then, Yuri arrives to ask him to go to the forest with their swords, so Hugo sees the prince as a rival. In the forest, the magic teacher asks the students to take a wand and conjure the power of water, aiming at the center of the target. During class, Shun and Mirai notice that Oka didn't attend, so the prince says she sometimes skips, although they don't know what she does. Meanwhile, Natsu tries to show off and cast a fire power, burning the target, but Shun extinguishes it, and the teacher gives Natsume a warning. At that moment, Fi's instinct alerts her as she feels something approaching them, and seeing the forest trees falling, the teacher tries to stop what's coming, but is defeated and turned to ashes. As they come out from the ground, they see it's an earth dragon. Natsume tries to show off with his fire abilities, but fails as he's knocked down with just one hit. Sir Shem takes his sword and decides to face it, remembering his brother, as otherwise he would kill him without trying. But Keisha, Yuri, and Sue follow him to help, and after facing difficulties, Faye appears and manages to bite it, and finally, they defeat it. Everyone congratulates the young man, but the prince thanks his friend and pet who doesn't say a word. So Shun uses his analysis ability, revealing that Faye turned into a realizing that the monster was one of their parents. Meanwhile, the spider manages to save herself from the fall, but now she's in trouble as some wasps and snakes are outside fighting. Although she finds a moment to escape, a ground dragon, Alava, appears in front of her. Those monsters that were fighting now try to stop the dragon, but it ends up defeating all of them, and the protagonist tries to escape silently, but the animal manages to spot her. After what happened, the dragon doesn't do anything against the spider. It simply leaves, leaving the protagonist alone, although she knows she can't always rely on luck. The spider decides to escape the danger but encounters a mantis, and upon analyzing it, she discovers she's in a labyrinth called Elro, where the mantis is stronger than the snake. But then an 8th level magician Teratect appears, so the spider says she'll become that when she evolves, but for now, she prefers to avoid problems and survive. After so much walking, she tries to find something to eat before her energy bar runs out. She finds some slugs, so it seems strange that no one tries to eat them, so she takes one to eat, but ends up vomiting as it was poisonous and nearly. She decides to leave him only as a last resort, although thanks to this, her resistance levels rise. On the way, she encounters 3 monsters of advanced level, but she manages to defeat them and calm her hunger. Then she checks her abilities and sees she obtained new ones related to poison, although she doesn't know how to use them. The spider explores the place again and feels something approaching. Upon seeing it's an animal similar to a monkey, she tries to flee again, but hundreds of them appear, causing her to become scared and move away as much as possible. But then she sees another species of monkey trying to attack her, and despite being stronger, she defeats it. However, when she bites it, the monkey emits a scream. When the protagonist finishes eating it, she's happy as she tried another species and leveled up, but in the distance, many monkeys approach as they hear their companions scream. While the spider rests peacefully, an earthquake wakes her up, and looking down, she sees the number of monkeys that came to avenge themselves on her. Some climb and others start throwing stones at her, leaving her with no escape. Despite being scared because there are too many, she refuses to give up and tries to find a way out, remembering her new poison ability. Although she manages to stop some, others climb and even jump at her, but she stops many with her webs, while others are still determined to end the spider, no matter the cost to their species. Being too many, she doesn't notice one of them reaching her and grabbing one of her legs. However, just in time, she levels up and sheds her skin, helping her to escape for a few seconds, but being outside her nest, she loses the advantage. The monsters continue to follow her, so she decides to take a risk and dodge them all while trapping them with her webs. With her ability, she manages to defeat them and even level up again, but this doesn't end as the evolved monkeys now pursue her. After a long battle against them, she finally wins the fight and levels up again, this time to level 9, although she was close to losing her life on more than one occasion. After this, she finally believes she's found a way out, but as she jumps for joy, she's about to fall into the void. After what happened, the protagonist manages to save herself with her webbing, although it's catching fire, so she believes she has bad luck, even thinking that perhaps God hates her for reincarnating her as a monster. When she manages to avoid being burned, a huge fire monster emerges from the magma, and upon analyzing the place, she realizes she's in the middle layer of the labyrinth. The monsters start attacking her, so she ends up taking refuge in the lower layer, trying to devise a plan to reach the upper layer without having to pass through the magma. However, she decides to stay where she is and evolve until she can reach a high level. Although she has the opportunity to evolve at that moment, she decides to do it and increases all her abilities and games more, trying to think which one could help her in the middle layer. On a new day in the kingdom, Faye has grown considerably after the confrontation due to her evolution. When Shun checks her attributes, he notices that all her levels have increased, thinking that if she continues like this, she won't fit in his room, but she cares more about not ending up like a monster. Upon arriving at class, Shun realizes that his classmates are looking at him, even greeting him. Keija says this is because he defeated the dragon, so now he's popular, but he says it was Faye who did all the work. Then Yuri approaches him to ask him to listen to the divine word as he needs to level up, but also asks him if he knows anyone with the taboo ability to let him know because they don't deserve to live. Fee, who was with the prince, hears this and becomes scared, while Sue feels jealous as the student is getting too close to her brother. Returning to the protagonist, she tries to advance with her abilities but fears that the same thing will happen to her again with detection. So if not think about it, she just leaves it and goes to look for food. But a huge fireball appears, and when she turns around, she sees an earth dragon trying to finish her off, but she has become faster and manages to escape, ending up in the middle layer where the fire monster is. The animal tries to attack her with fireballs, but she is faster, so she dodges everything. Later, she can see that her powers have run out, so she goes after her, but being very slow, the spider manages to defeat her. Then she decides to eat it, but she is disappointed as she thought it would taste good, but it's spicy. Then a fire catfish appears, so she tries to escape slowly, but it doesn't work as 2 of them are surrounding her, and she has no choice but to fight. Thanks to leveling up with her poison has become lethal, so with a single she manages to defeat one, while the other rival, seeing this, just leaves, abandoning the fight. Because of all this, the protagonist levels up again, so she celebrates by eating her opponent as it tastes delicious this time. Meanwhile, the humans continue to advance through the labyrinth, and one of them points out to the hero Julius, Shun's brother, which way to go. After what happened, Julius and his army defeat several monsters in the Elro labyrinth, but their main target is a spider-like monster. Meanwhile, the protagonist was satisfied with the great feast she had with the catfish, but she can't find another one to defeat, although a giant eel emerges from the magma and starts attacking her. Thanks to her perception, she dodges all the attacks, but the creature is faster than any she has faced before. Seeing her skills, she realizes she doesn't have much energy left, so the spider holds on until her opponent runs out of strength, although she is nearly caught by the flames. Then the eel falls to the ground, so the protagonist takes the opportunity to release her venom. And when it seemed like the spider was the winner, the monster wakes up again, which is a problem as the protagonist is exhausted. But she still fights, and after almost losing, she levels up and wins the battle, which makes her happy as she defeated a big animal and leveled up 3 times. So now she decides to evolve, but leaving her hungry, she eats the eel and tries her new legs, which now function as blades. Then she decides to use one of her new abilities, which is detection, and upon leveling up, she is surprised by the world she can see through it. She also hears a voice inside her that seems to be a variant of herself, which helps her analyze different situations. In another part of the Elro labyrinth, the soldiers and Prince Julius are camping when suddenly the hero feels a strange presence, and as they are ready for the attack, 3 huge spiders appear, and in the distance, the spider-like monster they were looking for appears, so the attack immediately begins. The white spider is too fast for them, but Julius manages to defeat it with the power of his sword, but only because the monster felt fear at one point and let itself be caught, so now they take their prey with them. In the demon world, there is a young woman who is considered the demon king. On another day, as an arachnid monster, the protagonist manages to obtain a powerful ability. In this case, it's the evil eye, and when she uses it, she's left speechless at how amazing it is as she defeats an opponent with just 1 attack. In the kingdom, Shun, Keiichia, and Fei talk to their teacher, who tells them that she found the whereabouts of 11 students, but they were refugees while she'll visit the other 2. However, 4 of the remaining ones have passed, so they only have to find the last 3 who are still alive, but she doesn't know how to reach them. She can't tell them more as it's a secret, so the kids suspect they might be animals like Fei. Oka also tells them they must avoid leveling up their skills as it's a warning she gives them, and they must trust her. Later, Sue arrives to ask the kids to go to the forest as those who will go on the excursion are being called. Before heading on the excursion, the teacher explains that they were chosen to do an activity to get to know an environment with weak monsters, and they must also get medicinal herbs. Then they form groups where Shun, Oka, and Natsume are on the same team, something that the proud classmate didn't like. Yuri asks Shun to use analysis on their classmates while they sleep to find out who has the taboo ability, but he refuses to do so, while Katya asks her friend to try to sort things out with Natsume as problems among the reincarnated ones can't be good. When Shun goes to collect herbs, he hears the sound of swords, but when he goes to investigate, Natsume throws fire at him and confronts him, saying that the prince must disappear and in this world, he exists so that he can rule. Analyzing him, Shun discovers the number of abilities he possesses. During the fight, Hugo confesses that his plan is to become the emperor of the place, and he will achieve it by releasing the monster they brought, which will end his classmates and teacher, so he will pretend to avenge their and return as a hero. Thus, he begins to attack the prince, and when he is about to deliver the final blow, Oka intervenes and informs them that they have arrested his subordinates and defeated the monster they brought, and when she tells him that she can't tolerate his behavior anymore, she activates an ability that causes Natsume to lose all of his skills and reduces his attributes, although she gives him another chance to live as a normal person since the world doesn't belong to him. Before the teacher leaves, she asks Shun to help the teacher and the other students as some of them were injured. In the Elro labyrinth, the spider has telescopic vision, so she puts it to the test and is amazed as it exceeds her expectations. Her other version suggests combining 2 abilities. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom world, Natsume says he will get revenge on Oka as she ruined his plans, but at that moment, a young woman appears in his room and tells him she will gladly help another reincarnated person. After a few days in the kingdom, Shun, Keiichia, and Yuri discuss the fact that Natsume hasn't appeared since that excursion day, and it's strange that he hasn't been punished since he tried to escape the prince. Then, Shun has a memory where he and his entire class, along with the teacher, have an outdoor class day. The kids played a soccer match, and when it ended, he decided to go buy drinks for his friends Oshima and Kyuya. When he reaches the vending machine, he gets scared because one of his classmates named Shuka Megashi stands behind him without saying a word. She's considered a strange girl by everyone, but the student just takes her drink and leaves, although the young man says it's scary. Once he manages to buy his drinks, he overhears Marai bothering Hiro Wakaba, so he discreetly interrupts, causing the girls to leave and the boy to go help Hiro. When his memory ends, the kids wonder how the other classmates who are still alive are doing, although they wonder why the teacher doesn't want to tell who's okay and who's not. At that moment, Oka arrives, so Shun takes the opportunity to ask about his friend Kyuya. to which she responds that he's fine, but when Faye asks about Wakaba, the teacher becomes serious. Meanwhile, the spider has a problem because she obtained a magic ability but doesn't know how to use it, so she starts trying to summon or produce some trick, but it's too much for her as she can't control it. When she argues with her other version, another one appears, but this time an expert in magic, so they leave everything to her. A tremor in the middle layer appears, so the spider goes out to find out what's happening, but a fire dragon emerges from the magma, and despite being injured, it's too strong to face. However, she still tries and puts up a fight. At one point, she uses her venom along with her magical power, fighting the dragon with her versions at the same time. But just when it seemed like victory was hers, a monster destroys that attack that was about to enter its mouth with a fireball, leaving the spider unsure of what to do as they face each other, and she has nowhere to escape as the dragon has been destroying everything in the area. Then the dragon throws a huge fireball at her while she asks it to wait since she doesn't want to lose. In the kingdom, Oka finishes telling her students that Hiro Wakaba passed, leaving the kids speechless. In the kingdom world, Shun rushes towards one of the mansion's rooms as his brother is back. The young man is happy to see him, but his expression changes when Julius tells him he was only there for a moment because he must go to the Empire as demons might be plotting something that could lead to. When the hero sees Faye, he's surprised as she has grown considerably, so Shun tells him that it was she who defeated the monster that attacked them. Julius thanks her and mentions that it's strange that at that moment there are two things found in the same place, revealing that adventurers found a dragon egg and some threads from a Terratech nest 15 years ago. So both Fee and the scarf he's wearing come from the Elro labyrinth. Before leaving, Julius and his team say they must pursue their goal, which is a world where they live in peace, and if demons seek to disrupt that peace, they will confront them. In the Elro labyrinth, just as the dragon was about to use his power against the spider, leaving her with nowhere to go, she manages to dodge it since she sensed it would happen. She then used her illusionistic ability to escape, and from above, she launched her venom with a paralyzing effect as a surprise attack. With that, she managed to defeat the dragon, although it cost her one of her legs. Her pride is at a higher level, but during her celebration, she begins to see a glow. As she approaches, the monster appears, leaving her surprised as she thinks maybe it used illusionism to show her an illusion of her victory. She knows that if it attacks her, it would end her, as she has no more energy, although the dragon is also weakened. Nevertheless, she decides to attack together with all her versions using magic, opening the infernal gate. This takes everything around them, but it doesn't work since the dragon is still alive but without energy and about to fall. So the spider takes advantage to finish the fight once and for all. When everything ends, she levels up again and is about to evolve once more, so she decides to celebrate by eating the dragon. Meanwhile, in the demon world, a mysterious man says he will find out why his dragon was. In the labyrinth, the spider is about to eat her banquet, but senses a strange presence as someone is teleporting to where she is. Thinking she's the target, she's surprised when the man arrives. The protagonist can't analyze him, so she doesn't know what she's facing, although he doesn't seem like a threat. The man tries to speak to her, but she doesn't understand his language, so she asks him to speak in her language. At that moment, a cell phone falls into the place. She can't believe that technology exists in that world, but what surprises her even more is hearing that it has a translation app. However, it's actually a woman on the other side who speaks with the man in his language. After conversing, the guy leaves the phone, and then the woman speaks with the spider, introducing herself as Dee, and says she asked the guy to leave her alone as he had been watching her all this time. She just seeks entertainment without any reason, as she's the evilest god in that world and likes to see others suffer and fight, but she doesn't provide any more information and just asks her to keep entertaining her, and she will surely find the answers she seeks. In the demon realm, the Demon King and her different brigades gather to initiate the battle against humans. One of them complains that a girl is the Demon King as it doesn't make sense, but another tells him not to complain or speak ill of her. Just as they're about to fight, the demon stops them with her power, trapping them in threads, saying she'll end them. Her secretary then tells them she was chosen because she possesses a power worthy of that title. After confirming everything is in order, they decide to start the war. The hero and his army feel a demonic movement, so they ask Julius not to let his guard down. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, the students are in class, but at that moment, Shun immediately receives the title of hero, leaving him frozen as this indicates his brother has. Because of this, the young man enters into crisis in the middle of class and tries to think it's not true, but his classmates approach him to find out what's wrong. The next day, the spider leaves the place, although she still has doubts about Dee and perhaps she knows how she was reborn as a monster. However, now she must only worry about how to get out of the middle layer where she seems to have found a way out. After the events in the kingdom, Shun informs the king and his entire family that he has received the title of hero, indicating that his brother Julius has passed. Leston, the prince's older brother, tries to console him while Silas, another of his brothers, says that despite the pain, they must think about what to do next. The king mentions that as members of the royalty, they must move forward, although they did not expect their youngest son to inherit such a title. However, the demons have started to attack and Julius lost in that confrontation. At that moment, a soldier arrives and informs them that some of their fortresses have fallen, including the Coxorium stronghold, as they couldn't do anything when a Terratech queen appeared. The king recalls that Julius had gone to that place, although his whereabouts are still unknown. The soldier also reports that the Desara fortress belonging to the Master Ronant was the only one that managed to quell the enemy forces. They remember that this man taught magic to the hero. Then the king orders everyone not to disclose the fall of the hero Julius, and that Schlain is the holder of said title, as this would make people nervous. He also tells Shun that he must leave the academy as he needs to prepare. At the Desara fortress, the soldiers are sure that there are no traces of enemies, although they thank the mage Ronan as they achieve victory because of him. However, the old man says that he only used half of his powers, although all this reminds him of the incident from 15 years ago in the Elra labyrinth with the labyrinth nightmare. In his memory, the master recalls going on a mission with several soldiers to find the labyrinth beast and exterminate it. He tried to rest at all times, but one of his soldiers didn't allow it as it wasn't a simple reconnaissance mission. After reaching the place where the spider was seen, they think that perhaps she had gone to the middle layer since she wasn't there. But one of the soldiers is paralyzed as he gets caught in the beast's web, and no matter how hard he tries to escape, he can't because her threads are too strong. Then the spider appears above them, leaving them paralyzed in her presence. The master says that although the monster hasn't initiated any attack, she has already activated several abilities. When the beast descends, she blocks their way out and launches a power at Ronan, but seeing that he didn't receive a wound, he realizes that she actually used analysis on them. When he uses it on her, he can see that she's the Zoair version and possesses several abilities like extreme magic, but then the analysis is blocked. That way, he realizes that she is the cause of the labyrinth's changes, so he orders everyone to flee from her power. But the soldiers try to attack only to be easily defeated, so they decide to teleport away, although for that, the master needs time to invoke his magic. Until then, the remaining soldiers try to buy time, but once everything is ready, the spider launches her power at the mage, but the soldier intervenes, injuring both, although luckily they were able to escape. Back in the present, the master says that the labyrinth nightmare is looming, and it's possible that it has evolved since another monster appeared, the Terratech Queen Coxorian. Meanwhile, the protagonist has reached level 20, so she now evolves from Zoair to Eve Sane, although this causes her to... It's been a month since Julius was defeated by the demons, and Shun, as his successor, is training his powers until Faye arrives and tells him that he still hasn't told the kingdom anything about his brother, although she heard that his army damaged the demon group, so they will stop bothering for a while. However, she also mentions that Herence, the soldier and sole survivor of the team, will be back and he will be able to tell Shun what happened to his brother and what they are fighting against. Although Shun is restless because he must follow in his brother's footsteps and won't be able to fight alongside Katya or Sue, Yuri will accompany him since she was named as Saint. Upon hearing this, Faye proposes to make a pact where she will fight by his side when needed. The young man isn't entirely in agreement, but he ends up accepting, and after completing the pact, the dragon turns into an egg as it is evolving. In the Elra labyrinth after evolving, the spider's knowledge of the world has increased significantly, although she has no doubt that the world could come to an end. Therefore, she decides to do something about it because she doesn't want to die alone with this world. But to do that, she must strengthen her abilities, so she decides to go after the Earth Dragon Alava. Her versions disagree because it's very powerful, but she must do it or they won't be able to save the world. When she goes out to look for the dragon, she descends to the middle layer where the most powerful monsters are found. This is evident when she encounters a huge serpent with great abilities. She slowly flees to avoid confronting it, but when the serpent leaves, she hears a crash. Using her telescopic vision, she sees that the serpent is fighting the dragon she was looking for. When it seemed like the fight was in favor of the serpent because it used gravity magic, which surprised the spider, the dragon managed to escape using its magic and defeated its opponent. The spider sees it in the distance and says that it doesn't seem like a fight because it was too... But for her, it was something beautiful, and she even began to admire the dragon's strength, realizing that what she's trying to face is too strong. After waiting for so long, Herence returns to the kingdom and apologizes to Shun for what happened. He explains that he carried a phoenix feather because Julius asked him to, and that allowed him to survive the attack. However, Shun tells him not to apologize because he knew his brother very well and he probably forced him to use it. Then Herence recounts that in the battle, Julius had defeated the enemy commander, but then a young woman dressed in white appeared in front of them and unleashed a power, and when he woke up, only the hero's cloak was left. He assumes that she used a corrosive attack that turns everything into dust. Shun begins to have memories of his brother and tearfully says that he will never be able to live up to him, but he wants to inherit his ideals. So Herence extends his hand and asks to fight together. The little spider starts attacking other small monsters just to level up, but when she encounters other earth dragons, she decides to retreat and go back home, marking them on her map. She starts thinking of a strategy to face the Alaba dragon since being on the ground wouldn't be much help. Suddenly, some bees start attacking her, so she loses patience and eliminates all of them. When she's done, she goes after the dragon and decides to confront it despite her fear. After what happened, the protagonist is about to confront the earth dragon Alaba using magic to stay in the air, although her opponent does the same, and no matter how much she launches her attacks, she only manages to scratch it, but it regenerates. Both face each other using their maximum power and magic, and the spider tries to dodge all the attacks since the dragon is faster. She even realizes that there are cobwebs she had prepared in advance, so she begins to destroy them. This annoys her, and she launches cobweb balls as an attack, but he dodges everything. However, it's actually part of her plan because the monster gets caught in her threads, and she uses a pain power against him, followed by all her attack powers. Although he manages to escape with a big, much to the spider's surprise, her opponent acquires several abilities because he used his accumulated points to acquire them just to finish her off. Despite it not being a good sign, everything indicates that the dragon sees her as a threat. After acquiring the abilities, the fight begins again, but now the dragon is much more powerful and faster, which the spider luckily manages to avoid and dodge. But she knows that during the fight, she also acquires abilities like him. When she reaches the labyrinth ceiling, she has no choice but to descend where the flames are, and in a careless moment, the dragon manages to burn her, so she has to use medicine synthesis to recover. Once on the ground, she tries to escape from the flames, but when she thought she found a way out, it was actually a trap because her opponent placed a magic spell where he injures the protagonist with his earth spikes, causing her to lose energy and life. To escape from her approaching opponent, she uses her evil eye, seeing the vision in one of her eyes. As she escapes, she tries to devise a plan as her opponent continues to pursue her. She tries to stay in the air, but surprisingly, the dragon appears and manages to bite her. The spider tries to get out as it could end her life, but from inside, she manages to release venom, freeing herself. However, she no longer has strength due to her injuries, so she begins to give up. But she remembers everything that happened and unleashes her last power against him, but both fall without any strength. She's about to finish him off, but the dragon gets up and deactivates all his abilities, as if showing her that he is satisfied with the fight. Although the spider gets annoyed because he doesn't try to do anything against her, giving up, she uses her evil eye and exterminates him, leveling up from 25 to 29, although her victory doesn't make her feel happy. Meanwhile, in the Demon Kingdom, the Demon King talks about how he faced several dragons in the past, and some were earth dragons, which are proud beings and more decent among all. In the Analite Kingdom, Shun decides to confront the Demon King so that his brother's is not in vain. After her fight, a protagonist follows the path marked by the humans, so she searches for the labyrinth's exit since she believes she is ready for the outside world. After what happened, the protagonist is free, but upon exiting, she notices that she is surrounded by a large wall and soldiers aiming to attack her because they are there to prevent anyone from escaping the labyrinth. However, since they are humans, she doesn't believe she should them, so she simply demolishes the place. Upon leaving that place, she begins to enjoy the open air and the scenery, but she starts to feel hungry. She gets the idea to go to the nearby village and look for food, but she realizes that they might treat her like a monster and want to kill her. So she searches among her abilities and finds that she can acquire the body of a woman, so that becomes her next objective. However, she receives a signal from her mother asking her to return to the labyrinth, but she refuses to do so as she has no interest in going back. She goes out to look for food, saying that her mother can stay angry because being too big, she cannot escape from the place. In the kingdom, Shun introduces his assistant Anna to Hirance, but the soldier asks the young man to talk, which he refuses as he has a meeting. At that meeting, the royal family gathers with Potamus, the patriarch of the elves, and with Philomos. She apologizes as if she had done her job better, the war wouldn't have broken out and Julius would still be alive. Sutless doesn't think it's time for apologies as they must now think about the next step, and that is to send Shun to war. However, both Leston and the king don't believe it's the right thing to do as they don't see it necessary without having a plan. Potamus agrees as the current Demon King has enormous power, and his followers are also dangerous, so it would be imprudent to act without better understanding the situation. Before leaving, he advises Shun not to trust Dustin, the Bishop of the Divine Word. Meanwhile, Kasia is thinking about her friend Shun when Sue appears to talk about how worried she is about her brother. But at that moment, Natsume appears and says she needs a favor to which none can oppose, invoking a power in front of them. In the forest outside the labyrinth, the soldiers try to clear the rubble, but they hear an and a horde of spiders runs towards them, carrying everything in their path. The protagonist enjoys the open air until she senses their presence and knows that her mother sent them all. Through analysis, she realizes they are very strong, but she decides to face them even though they outnumber her in quantity and size. She manages to trap some of them in her trap, but the Arachnotecto and the trio of Major Pterodactyl manage to escape, so they attack her with their threads. She dodges them and leads them into her web trap, taking the Arachnotecto to the middle layer of the labyrinth. However, it still resists, and she finds it impossible to finish the fight, so she uses her maximum power to make it fall into the magma, thus winning. Upon returning with teleportation to the outside world, she brings the spider's corpse for her companions to see and then teleports them all to the magma to eat them afterward. However, she still receives signals from her mother, which she finds annoying, so she sends her versions into her mother's mind to get rid of her, although she doesn't actually have a plan. After the protagonist sends her versions to deal with her mother, she continues on her way, although she misses them. Along the way, she encounters humans where she can see that some bandits are attacking a carriage. She's unsure if she should get involved since they will still see her as an enemy in the end. Although she has no intention of confronting humans, she had to eat those who set fire to her house in the labyrinth, but she thinks it would be different since they are bandits. At that moment, she hears the crying of a baby and doesn't hesitate to intervene, ending all of them. She then helps some of the wounded soldiers, and before leaving, the couple with their baby leave the carriage, so the spider takes the opportunity to analyze the girl and discovers that she is a vampire and a reincarnated being. This starts a tantrum as she thinks it's really unfair since she is a monster, but she decides to leave annoyed. Later, the spider encounters a group of elves looking for the girl, realizing that despite inviting the vampire, her life is also complicated. In the kingdom of Analite, Sue takes Shun to the king for a supposed conversation, but it's all a lie. The girl kills the king with her power, all to blame the prince. When the guards arrive, the young man tries to tell them that he's not guilty, but he is arrested anyway. However, all of this is the work of Celis, who desires the throne, and Natsume, who wants revenge on her companion. Shun doesn't understand his brother's reason, as he was the eldest and the successor to their father. But Silas explains that their father planned to leave the kingdom to him even before they knew he was chosen as a hero, as it was an excuse to keep him away from battles. The prince looks at his sister and sees that she's under a spell, and Natsume is the culprit. This angers the young man, who ends up hitting his enemy and tries to use his magic against him, but a powerful force stops him, belonging to a woman named Sophia, who Hugo asks not to interfere since the prince is his prey. However, Oka appears and attacks her student, managing to take Shun away while dealing with the enemy soldiers. The prince tries to rescue Sue, but Herence, Anna, and the teacher ask him to escape. Later, they tell Shun that a rebellion organized by Celis and Natsume was provoked, where they try to blame everything on the young man. When they were about to leave the castle, enemy soldiers blocked the exit, but thanks to Leston and his guards, they managed to escape. Later, Oka tells them that the church appointed Natsume as the new hero due to the young man's mental control power, and she has a hunch that she controls ability, so if her power is superior, and as long as Sophia supports their enemies, they have no chance. That night, Sophia Potamus. At that moment, the group of survivors is surrounded by enemies where Katya also fights on their side. The young man tries to wake up his friend, but when she's about to regain consciousness, she injures herself so as not to harm her friend, causing her to... But thanks to Shun, she comes back to life. At that moment, Sophia appears with Potamus' head, so Oka tries to ask her for an explanation of why she's doing all this. The girl reminds her that they are no longer in Japan and that she shouldn't say that is wrong because she knows what she did in the past. The prince realizes that she is a reincarnated being, but when the fight continues, the hero is injured while the teacher is taken hostage, indicating that the enemies will win. But Faye appears, and thanks to her and her new evolution, they manage to escape. After a few days, since the protagonist's variants were sent to deal with her mother, they'd find it strange that their mother did not do anything to defend herself or attack them. Since they have been united since birth and being different, she believes her mother could have been watching them. At that moment, they hear a noise, but it is because their mother caused an to go out into the outside world and search for her daughter. So the variants try to communicate with the protagonist, but the huge spider prevents them from communicating, and according to their initial hypothesis that their mother could not escape, it's over. Meanwhile, the spider is walking through the forest thinking about eating, but she feels the imposing presence of her mother, so she tries to escape. But it is too late as she falls from the sky where her mother is, and upon analyzing her, she notices that she is 3 times stronger than the earth dragon Alaba, so she only has to flee while dodging her attacks. but is impossible for her since she cannot counterattack without communicating with her variants. When she receives a blow, she manages to teleport to the labyrinth and realizes that she is injured, and although she does not like to return, she will have to stay until she can heal, but it will not be so as an army of spiders was waiting for her. Upon reaching her nest, one of the arachnids injures her with its poison, so she knows it will give her trouble. As she flees from them, she plans to take them to the middle layer to beat them, but before she arrives, an arachnid puppet with several knives appears, which seems to be her mother's trump card, although it is a low blow to have. For a moment, the protagonist loses hope of winning since she lost several of her, and seeing the number of enemies, she faces them but does not want to give up, so she begins to attack them all at once while trying to recover, but that does not seem to work since her powers do not harm them. Although thanks to an illusion, she manages to deceive them. But when she thought she was winning, she touches a thread from the puppet and it throws an arachnid on her, crushing her, so she has no choice but to use her exterminating evil eye before she's finished, thanks to which she manages to save herself and evolve, healing her body completely, and takes her enemies to the middle layer, which is a place she already dominates, to finish them off. When the fight ends, the protagonist begins to think about the puppet and when it appeared since she doubts if it is some kind of evolution, but she cannot investigate it since she cannot communicate with her variants. In another scene, Prince Shun, along with his team, is planning to intercept Natsume and her troops as they head to the elves' village, but for that, they must pass through the labyrinth of Elro. After the spider's evolution in the Horowa zone, she receives the ability of immortality, so she is happy because she can face her mother, although she also receives the commander ability. At that moment, the cell phone rings and Dee is on the other side, who calls to congratulate her for receiving immortality since it makes her a unique monster in the world, and as she must be in a good mood, Dee answers some of her questions. She tells her that she died in Japan because of the Demon King and the hero of another generation, both of whom wielded great power, the god of control, which ended up passing through the dimensional barrier and fell to Earth, to be exact, in the classroom where she was everyone, including herself, since the administrator Dee was also there but cannot reveal who she is, although she wanted to protect their souls and keep their memories, so she made sure they were reborn. Out of the 25 who were there, she is one of the only ones who were reborn as an animal, as most were reborn as humans, although they are still babies, and she is the only one with an advantage as she is advancing with her abilities and evolving. However, the spider would have preferred to be a human, so she blames Dee, but she responds that there is a faction that sees the administrators as enemies, so they want to eliminate them, thus finishing giving her the answers she was looking for. But before leaving, she asks her to keep entertaining her. In another scene, Prince Shun along with his team arrives at a village where Hirons takes him to Goif, a labyrinth guide who helped them on many occasions when Julius was alive. When they are gathered, a soldier asks him to help them cross the labyrinth to reach the other continent since the entrance to the labyrinth is guarded by Imperial troops, and they are fugitives, although they are accused of crimes they did not commit. The man apologizes despite knowing they are innocent but cannot help them as he does not want to endanger his family. However, Basgeth, his father, agrees to guide them as he says he is not a coward like his son. While the team plans how to cross, Fai asks to speak with Keiichi and Oka through telepathy. When they return to the cabin, Shun goes outside and can see that Fi has a human appearance thanks to her new ability, although it seems strange to the boys since she is the only one who, when becoming human, returned to how she was in school. At that moment, Shun remembers again that they were reborn, so Oka says that 3 students along with Wakaba will not see him again since they have also died in this world, so Keiichi knows that the teacher is aware of what happens with the students, although she does not want to reveal Sophia's identity or where the other reincarnated ones are. The next day, the team, guided by Basgath, takes the route that is below the sea and to the labyrinth, since the seas are ruled by water dragons, and in this way, they can avoid the soldiers of the Empire. Everyone jumps into the water alone except Shun, who jumps with Faye since he does not know how to swim, but while in the sea, a dragon appears, so the prince tries to get its attention, so that the others can escape, but feeling cornered, Faye helps him, and they manage to reach the labyrinth. Returning to the protagonist, she is enjoying the beach and fishing, but when she manages to catch something, she tries to pull it out thinking it was a fish, but it turns out to be a dragon. Luckily, with her skills, she manages to defeat it, although that reminds her that she has other matters to attend to, so she teleports and fights with the puppet. After drowning it, she wins the battle, and when she returns to fishing, one of her variants manages to connect with her, asking her to flee since her mother was never at the top as there is a monstrous and superior creature coming after her. At that moment, there is a huge and a girl named Ariel appears, but she is a level 139 trajectory, who is actually the Demon King, so the spider tries to flee as she does not seek a fight, but the Demon King from afar destroys her with a single shot, preventing her from escaping again. The Demon King is ready with all her brigades to begin the attack, so she heads to the village of the elves. Although her secretary asks why she will march through the territory of Queen Terratecto, to which she says that they are her family, so they do as she asks, although there was a spider that was disobedient. After the prince and his team enter the labyrinth, they face some monsters, but Basgath asks them to camp since they could be affected by the labyrinth disease, which is when their minds end up consumed by the labyrinth, so the boys agree. When everyone is resting, Shun has a bad dream that wakes him up, but the guide tells him about the legendary nightmare of the labyrinth, and according to the saying, bad dreams announce its arrival, but Oka says that the nightmare was ended long ago, although he does not believe it to be true since it is hard to believe because upon meeting her and being the first to discover her, he knew how strong she was, feeling his life was in danger. But he discovered that if they do not attack her, she does nothing to them, which makes her peculiar, so he advises Shum to flee when he knows that his opponent is stronger, since he must strengthen himself and then try again. Although the prince says that he will not flee anyway since people depend on him. After resting, the team continues their journey but must choose a route. The first one is short but dangerous, the second one is long but safer, and the last one is out of the options since it is where the nightmare of the labyrinth lived. Although now there are its remnants, and despite not attacking them, they fill the place with almost unpredictable threads, and if you cut some, they attack you, so the boys decide to take the shortest route. When they start their journey, they come across a very fast earth dragon. Although when everything seemed to end there, Theo manages to stop it, and with the help of Oka and Kachia, they injure it. But it is Shun who manages to defeat it, so everyone receives the title of Dragon Slayer. However, at that moment, the prince feels a presence and several remnants begin to appear around them, which, when analyzed by Shum and his team, tell them that some of them are reincarnated, but also weak people. The prince tries to ask what they know about this topic, to which they reply that their mistress and mother were reincarnated, but soon he will know the truth since the world is beginning to come to an end, and everyone will. Basgath gets upset and hits the young man since he should not have interfered with them because he could have put everyone in danger, although Shun cannot stop thinking about what the remnants said. That night, Shun has another nightmare, but this time with his companion Negashi, so he realizes that it has been happening since he entered the labyrinth. As they continue on their way, they reach a large hole that was made in the past by the ancient lady of the labyrinth, Queen Terratecto, but now is full of giant bees. So Faye is in charge of taking them out, transformed into a dragon. Upon exiting, they manage to reach the Casanagra continent and can see the village of the elves. Returning to the protagonist after being destroyed by the Demon King, her head floats in the sea since she is immortal, so now she must wait for the rest of her body to regenerate. But she feels frustrated since now that she managed to escape, not only her mother but also a Demon King are pursuing her, although she knows that her species is Terratecta origin, so her mother surely answers to her. At that moment, she is relieved that the Demon King did not use abyssal magic since it is a power that can undo even the soul. Although she finds out that she is still alive, she will truly end her, so now she must devise a plan since her immortality will not be enough. However, the Demon King realizes that the spider is still alive since she sees one of her variants attacking the mind of the great spider, invading her soul and cannot expel her, so she only has to find the original body and end her. After the protagonist's head manages to survive, she finally regains her complete body by leveling up, and now that her body is ready, she goes out to find out where she is. Thanks to her clairvoyance, she sees the carriage where the vampire girl was being transported, and she realizes that they are still after her. When the carriage reaches its destination, which is the mansion, the woman thinks that the divine goddess sent that monster to help them, but the vampire girl's father asks his butler to investigate the spider. When the girl is resting in her room, she recounts that she is a reincarnated person named Negashi, and in this life she is Sophia, the daughter of nobles. Although she does not understand how she ended up there, as she only remembers being in literature classes, despite that, her parents and butler treat her better than anyone did in another life, so she got used to it and began to believe that she could live without worries. However, one day while traveling with her parents in the carriage, she overheard their conversation with the butler where they say that the Church of the Divine Word looks at them with suspicion. At that moment, a group of bandits attacks them, but she sees when the spider helped them, and there she discovers that there are monsters in the place, so she's a little afraid of seeing it again. At that moment, the butler arrives to announce that that spider was seen outside the city. After Shum and his team managed to leave the labyrinth, Balbias retired since he fulfilled his duty as a guide, and in return, they ask him to take the parts of the Earth Dragon since they are very valuable. Upon reaching the continent, Fee transforms back into a human, and they cover her wings so as not to generate conflicts with the Church of the Divine Word. In Sophia's mansion, some bandits sneak in until they reach the main room, but they cannot enter as one by one they begin to fall. However, this is because in the distance, the spider is using her lethal eagle eye to finish them off, since she would feel bad if something happened to them after rescuing them, although one bandit manages to escape. But in reality, the protagonist let him go since she marked him to know who is behind this. When the bandit reaches his hideout, the spider can see that they are elves, although she cannot hear their conversation. So she decides to stay in the place and be a nanny since she must finish her work, although it also helps her to stay away from the Demon King. Meanwhile, that elf meets his superior, who is Potimas, and upon learning about the spider, he asks to keep an eye on her since on 2 occasions she intervened in the attack. Then the patriarch of the elves thinks that maybe she is one of the remnants of Ariel and suppose that only he knew about the reincarnated ones. The next day, the protagonist wakes up and sees people praying, who are actually bandits, so she does not hesitate to finish them off. But this leaves her thinking if all the bandits are religious. Meanwhile, Dustin learns that his people disguised as bandits were, but he knows that the nightmare of the labyrinth is responsible, so he must stay alert to her and to Ariel. Although he does not know what Karen intends and why she needs so many children, although the confrontation between Ariel and Potimas would be ideal for him. In the kingdom of Sariela, the noble and his butler talk about the nightmare of the labyrinth, so they know that it was her who ended the bandits, although they do not know what she intends, but they realize that she is intelligent, so the butler proposes to talk to her if she understands their language, but his master is not entirely in agreement. Then a soldier arrives to report that the spider is helping to heal the sick, leaving the men without understanding what she intends. The protagonist realizes that the noble sees her as a threat, while his wife has a good impression of her, as the religion there venerates a goddess and considers spiders sacred because one serves a goddess who is a divine beast. At that moment, she remembers that the Demon King had that title, but then a woman interrupts her thought as she came to ask for help to heal her sick son. The spider knew that she had nothing to lose by helping her, so she did, and in gratitude, the lady gave her an apple, leaving her happy, although after waking up from her nap, a long line of people is waiting for her to ask for help. After what happened, the protagonist is revered as a divine beast by all the inhabitants of the city, who even believe they are now protected. Some of them even start selling products related to her. However, despite enjoying that time, she gets upset afterward because she was always a lonely person in the other world and will continue to be in this one. In another scene, Shun and the others arrive at the elf village through teleportation hidden in the forest. However, the elves receive them and prohibit their passage until Potimus appears, surprising them since they saw his. But he tells them that it's not so easy to kill him. He then informs them that several soldiers from the kingdom were sent to the Empire and are opening a path through the forest, but if the demons find out, they wouldn't miss the opportunity. That night, the boys, except for Oka, are gathered and talk about how strange it was for Potimus to be waiting for their arrival, so they believe they must be careful. But Keita tells them that they should also be careful with the teacher since it's strange that she doesn't tell them anything and she could have even acted or warned their leader that they were coming. The next day, Oka takes the boys to meet their reincarnated classmates who work in the village. Some are happy to see them, while others are surprised to see Oshima as a woman and even fall in love with her. Some others feel nothing when they see them, like the class delegate. She asks to go inside her cabin to talk quietly, although they do not allow the teacher to enter. Once everyone is gathered, they begin to introduce themselves. Then Shun and Keisha tell them about what happened in the kingdom and that Natsume is behind it. They say they didn't know anything since they have no relationship with the outside world or the elves. They also tell the boys that several of them were sold by their parents when they were babies, and that the teacher is the villain of the story. At that moment, Shun remembers that Sophia told her teacher that she shouldn't tell her what is right or wrong. The class delegate says that when they were taken to that place, they were told it was only to protect them, but they are prisoners there since they have no contact with anyone. So she tells them that they cannot trust the elves or the teacher. Shun and Keisha wonder where Kyuya is and how true the teacher's words about those who didn't survive are. Returning to the kingdom of Sariela, the nobles discuss that the kingdom of Oats has requested the delivery of the spider monster since they declared ownership rights and asked to be able to punish her since she destroyed their walls. Sophia is in her room and hears their conversation, thinking that her father has been very worried since then. Since she saw her, she seemed like a dangerous monster to her. At that moment, Potimus arrives to talk about the spider that is in his village, but he actually approaches Sophia and notices that she is a reincarnated person and thinks that Ariel sent her to protect her. Meanwhile, the spider senses the presence of the Demon King heading toward her and teleports to where her mother is to end the fight. However, her mother sets a trap with her threads, and although she manages to escape again, she is destroyed, leaving only her head alive. With the help of her variants, she begins to counterattack because by parts of her mother, she transferred her abilities. After seeing her numerous attack figures and other abilities, she defeats her mother. However, she cannot celebrate as her body variant went with the Demon King when she tried to attack her, and it is possible she may not see her again. At that moment, she senses Ariel's presence heading toward her and simply decides to flee again. But before that, she says goodbye to her companion. After escaping from the Demon King, the protagonist returns to the village where she is revered, but some soldiers arrive and say they must take her because she belongs to their kingdom. However, her caretakers try to defend her, but she takes the offerings that the humans gave her and leaves the place. In the distance, she can see that the soldier from Oats is staying at the mansion of the vampire girl, so she knows that this will bring trouble. Later, she decides to see what the Demon King is doing since she knows that eventually she will have to leave that place to escape, and with her clairvoyance, she sees that Ariel is facing a powerful earth dragon. But at that moment, the man who visited her in the labyrinth appears. He tells her his name is Galidistides and asks her to stop attacking the Demon King. Although she doesn't understand why he says that since she is the one being pursued and targeted, when she realizes he is talking to the spider, she responds that it's her body variant that is doing it and she cannot communicate with her. So what he asks is impossible. However, Galidistides then asks her to stop interacting with humans since her actions have consequences that are hard to ignore. He recommends she go live in a more discreet place, but she ignores his request again because she has seen the truth about the world and knows it will come to an end. She doesn't intend to sit idly by, so she will do what she can. The man accepts her words and leaves. After he leaves, a surprise attack occurs, and after defeating them, she realizes they were soldiers from Oats. The events caused by the spider have repercussions in the village as the Kingdom of Oats declares war on the nation of Sariella. Additionally, they have the support of Rengsen and Aleus. Thus, what the butler and his master had thought turned out to be true, it was all a trap to start a war. The spider can feel all of this, so feeling guilty because she doesn't want the country where the vampire girl lives to be defeated, she decides to help her and go to war. In another scene, the teacher recounts that before being reborn, she always dreamed of being a teacher that her students enjoyed, trusted, and laughed with. That's why she made an effort to find out what they liked. However, after she was reborn as an elf and acquired an ability where she had a list of her students and could see their entire past, present, and future. She saw that most of them would. So after acquiring telepathy, she communicated with her father, Potimas, and told him what had happened. She asked him to help and protect her students, and he agreed. In his mission to gather them, in many cases, he offered money, and in others, he killed them. This prevented some from, but her ability has restrictions. She cannot use it on herself or share the information she obtains with her students. However, this caused everyone in the village to hate her, but she only did it for the sake of her students. She questions if she's a good teacher. The next day, Shun and his team set out to test how resistant the barrier of the elf village is, so even with great power from one of the reincarnated individuals, they cannot destroy it. Kaguya supposes that for their enemies to enter, they must deactivate it from the inside, so there may be a traitor among them. Upon returning, the teacher intercepts them as she wishes to tell them something before the battle. There she reveals to Hirance and Anna that they are all reincarnated, and when they arrived in this world, they were granted abilities that improve each time they leveled up. However, she has the idea that they are there with some intention because there is an old story among the elves where the gods pursue those who come from other worlds to kill them and obtain their power, and they call themselves administrators. They are the ones who led Natsume to provoke these actions as they are using him. She reveals that Sophia is Negishi, and in the past, she allied with the administrators. The teacher decided to disclose this because she did not want to see her students fight, but she asked them to survive the war however they can. Later, the group gathered to devise a plan, so they proposed to guard the portals that lead to the village. However, Fag reminds them that there is a woman they should worry more about than Natsume as she has the ability to block the abilities of others, which makes them doubt if she could use it on the barrier. But then they believe that there may be other reincarnated individuals they must face besides Negishi, Natsume, and Haseby, so it could be Kusawa and Kyuya, as according to the teacher, they were still alive. Then Hirance asks everyone to prepare as there is one day left until the war. The next day, while the kids train, they hear noises coming from the portals, and upon arrival, they encounter a young man who, from his attitude, they realize is Kusuma, another of their companions, but he is the enemy. So they all try to stop him, but he manages to escape, causing an explosion in the place. When they are outside, they can notice that it was a plan to bring down the barrier. The day of the battle begins, and Oka faces Natsume. Despite seeing his future and knowing that she would die in battle, she tries to stop him. But now he is stronger, as he not only has the ability of, but also of greed, another sin, and with it, he can absorb the power of each enemy he eliminates. This leaves Oka stunned, and in a moment of carelessness, she is injured and Yuri attacks her. However, the teacher responds by finishing off Yuri. She then creates a portal under Natsume, where he begins to suffocate, but just when she thought it was the end for the young man, Sophia interferes, injuring Oka. So she ends up on the ground and her two students are about to eliminate her. At that moment, she only wonders if she was a good teacher to her students, but Shun and Faye appear to help her. On the day of the battle between Seriala and Oates, the protagonist enjoys the as if she were a journalist, even though all of this was her fault. Later, she decides to get involved and attacks the soldiers of the Empire, ending them with a single blow. However, in the distance, a blue-haired boy watches the battle. At that moment, the Demon King appears in front of her, leaving her with no escape. A few minutes earlier, Ariel fights against an ancient Earth dragon. She asked it to leave the newcomers alone as they could change the world. However, it refuses, so she defeats the monster. But then she feels the urge to eat it, realizing that something is wrong and this is not like her. Just as she is about to do it, Gleidostotes appears and tells her that both her consciousness and that of the spider's variant are connecting, making it difficult to differentiate between them. She admits that she has less desire to end her, but she will still seek revenge for what she did. Back in the battle, Ariel tells the spider that she wants to finish her, but the protagonist only wants to escape. However, she cannot because her enemy has created a barrier that prevents her from leaving, so she starts to attack, but since she consumes her mother, she has abilities that make it easier for her to dodge attacks. Nevertheless, it is still impossible for her to attack as Ariel quickly regains her energy, even just by consuming soil. Meanwhile, the protagonist levels up by accidentally ending soldiers. At that moment, the boy watching the battle steps into the confrontation, claiming to be the monster's opponent. For a second, everything becomes silent, and the spider doesn't know whom to attack, the boy, or take advantage of the moment to escape. However, a fireball appears, distracting everyone, and the Demon King uses this opportunity to unleash her abyssal magic upon the protagonist, the one power that the spider's immortality cannot withstand. Returning to the fight between the elves and the kingdom, one of the reincarnated individuals tries to talk to Natsume, but apparently he cannot remember him, which seems strange to everyone. Then, Shun stops Natsume and asks that no one interfere in the fight as they need to settle scores. However, upon analysis, he realizes that Hugo has several abilities and titles that are difficult to understand how he obtained them. After what happened, one of the demon army soldiers tells the Demon King that they will keep Sigun busy while she deals with her target, which is Potamus. The elf is observing everything from a technological facility where he can see the entire fight and requests that all their squads be sent into battle. Meanwhile, the battle between Natsume and Shun begins, and everyone can see that Hugo only attacks brutally, while the prince has more precise attacks. Once the enemy is on the ground, Shun asks him to surrender since this world does not belong to him. Natsume tells Sophia to finish them all, but she refuses, stating that the young man had asked her not to interfere, and she also says that the boy is no longer useful to them. At that moment, Merizafis, a general of the demon army, appears, and the kids realize that the demons are behind this and actually distract the elves with the imperial troops. Shun says he will confront Sophia, but first, they deal with Natsume. During the fight, Shun seems to be at a disadvantage, so his whole team fights together to defeat the vampire and her companion. However, Sophia is very strong and says that although her mistress wants it, she was asked not to kill any of the reincarnated. Anna is about to attack her, but the prince intervenes and gets injured again. He asks her why she doesn't just finish them off since she wants to. She tells him that they are actually after the elves, which helps distract the young man. They all come up with a plan to defeat her, but it fails as she avoids the blow with just the strength of her arm and throws Shun away. At that moment, Fee stands in front of the enemy and asks if she will spare their lives if they surrender. He explains that he didn't say it before because his master wouldn't have listened due to his pride. Sophia is surprised but says that she is the only one who understands the situation they are in, so she agrees. However, she sees Merizafis lying on the ground as they finish him, but the kids realize it was just a clone. Before leaving, he apologizes to his mistress for not being able to protect her, but Sophia says he always took care of her since he was her butler, so she sends him to lead his troops as his duty in that place was already done. After this, Shun gets up and apologizes but says he won't give up because his brother wouldn't have. He must finish the battle, and when everyone turns against Sophia again, a young man appears and hits two of them, saying they can't keep wasting time. The young man talks to the prince, who immediately realizes it's his friend Kuya, now called Wrath, and he's a general of the demon brigades. He confesses that he works with the demons to eliminate the elves and doesn't understand why they are on their side since they are a danger, but he believes it may be because they were deceived. Oka gets upset and says he doesn't know what the administrators are planning, but he must remember what they did to his kingdom. Not wanting to waste any more time, several enemy soldiers surround Shun and his team, but before leaving, Sophia reveals that they deceived the teacher and that it will be difficult for her to listen. At that moment, an army of elves appears and informs the hero that the Demon King is approaching the village, so he must go to face her. However, wrath prevents him from teleporting and along with Sophia, finishes them off. Then they teleport several combat units surrounding the enemies and opening fire on them. But the kids begin to wonder how the elves have so many fighting machines and at that level, while Shun worries about his friend Kuya. When Ariel casts abyssal magic at the protagonist, she doesn't know what to do as it will end her. But once it reaches her, she turns to dust only to be reborn thanks to acquiring several of her mother's abilities by consuming her. One of these abilities allows her to lay eggs, creating weaker copies of herself. She supposes she can transfer her parallel wills, and it works, as she is reborn in one of them, evolving again, but this time becoming human. In the battle between the demons and the elves, they open fire on the two enemy demons, but they manage to put up a barrier, causing no harm. Since the barrier is made of metal, they start destroying everything and even the elves. Shun decides to intervene to end the fight, but Wrath stops him, throwing him away and then attacking the other kids. To prevent the hero from interfering further, he says he will put him to sleep for a moment. Anna stands in the way and her life, saving Shun. He knows he's in time and manages to save her thanks to his ability. However, he reaches a taboo level due to this and starts installing information. After seeing the same information as the protagonist, he loses his sanity and Katya has to intervene to calm him down. At that moment, Natsu regains strength and attacks Sophia, but she stops him. When she is about to defeat him, a white-clad woman appears behind them, interfering. The others are surprised to see her, knowing she's Wakaba. As for the protagonist, her evolution turns her into half-human, half-spider, and she's happy with her new appearance. She even leveled up in her abilities and gained others. At that moment, the other eggs hatch and her offspring are born. She thinks she'll be a bad mother if she abandons them, so before leaving, she leaves them food and wishes them luck in their survival. As she starts walking, she thinks about what to do, so the first thing she does is check on the city of the vampire girl. Using her clairvoyance, she sees that the city is in flames and even some elves have entered the mansion. Meanwhile, in the mansion, the noble orders his butler Merizafis to take care of Sophia, since he is the only one he trusts. Man takes the baby after her parents said goodbye to her. At that moment, bandits invade the room and take the noble's lives. While the butler tries to escape, several elves shoot arrows at Merizafis, gravely wounding him. Although he tries to stand up to escape, Sophia knows no one can help them, so she bites the man, turning him into a vampire. To do this, he loses control but defeats all the enemies until Potamus arrives and throws him away. Sophia recognizes him just by seeing him as he visited them a few days earlier. The elf patriarch realizes that the reincarnated girl is a vampire and asks to end her life as she may cause them problems later. He plans to tell Oka that she was simply a victim of the battle. Merizafis intervenes as he is in charge of taking care of the girl, but Potamus is not stopped. He decides to unleash his power, but at that moment, the protagonist teleports to the scene and with a blow prevents him from releasing his power. Sophia is happy to see her, but at that moment, she realizes it's Hiro Wakaba. She finishes off the other elves and heals the butler's wounds. Later, Potamus gets up, surprising Wakaba as his power did nothing to him. He tries to use his other abilities, but Potamus deactivates all of them, telling her she seems to be a threat. He tries to finish her off, and in the middle of the fight, the protagonist realizes that the elf carries technology on him. Even his face is artificial, so he is the one she saw in all the information she received and is responsible for the world being on the brink of destruction. She knows she must eliminate him. In the midst of the battle, Wakaba loses several parts of her, finding it difficult to fight as she can't activate her powers. But luckily, the Demon King arrives, and despite initially showing a different personality than the protagonist was used to, she becomes herself again, asking Potamus what he's doing there. As he refuses to answer her, she breaks his robotic head and tells him she'll do the same to his real body, while the elf realizes that he can't defeat her with that. Then the Demon King asks for a truce, as she has no more options to end her life, and her bodies will now live in her, so she no longer feels the need to kill her. When the elf is defeated by the Demon King, he wakes up in an incubator and says he will keep an eye on the Spider Woman and will end her. Later, Ariel proposes to Wakaba and the vampires to be allies to eliminate the elf Potamus, as he will be responsible for ending the world. This way, the protagonist joins the demons who aim to save the world.